Well, I tried to get them to change their mind. They're not going to change their mind. They already had a thing going on. I guess we're on. So you know my name because it's on the thing, but it's Barry Markowitz, and I'm here at the invitation of Alan Nakagawa. I thank you for that. And so tonight I figured what I'm going to do is just take you through a sort of like history of memories and sounds. I do associate memory and sound together, and what I did was I put together a kind of sound and whistle kind of board. It's called the Kazoo and Whistle Wall of Memories. And let me just talk to you about this for a minute. Um, a lot of this stuff are kazoos because in the past, through my performance work, as a performance artist in the 70s and through the mid 80s and sometimes in the 2000s as well, I've used kazoo as tonal ideas to sort of transfer memory and set the stage for memory. Stories about me, stories about incidents in my life. So, as you can see, I kind of this one keeps on slipping. This one can't be trusted. Untrustworthy. But I sort of set it up here, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how that's going. And I arranged it so that some of these I will use and some of them I won't use. They're just here because they belong here. They're here because they have an attached memory to it. And as you can see, some of these are kind of new. It's because they're just replaced the old ones. They don't have any less value for me. The old ones have gone their way. But let me point out this one over here. This one has seen battle. This one has come down the pike. This one has stayed with me for a good maybe 30, 40 years. And it does represent a lot of kazoos and whistles and funny kind of instruments I had as a boy. And that was my saving grace as a boy because I was a sickly child and not much, conversation, and I was always in one hospital or another, one terminal ward or another, one problem or surgery or something like that. So I took to sort of the kazoo to sort of like lift myself up, make sounds and stuff like that. So that would be that one. And this one, you might know, this one's from my sister, and it's a talking phone, a talking watch. And she sends me a bunch of them all the time because she gets them free from the Braille Center. And it has some tunes on it. So, whenever I play them, I kind of think of her and then maybe call her and stuff like that. So, and then we have a nose whistle, a little slide flute. We have a train whistle, what I call a lip whizzer, that kind of thing, and just a few other things. These sort of like, this is my prize, 99-cent store whistles, 6 in a pack. They're fabulous. And I'll tell you something about these things. They're adaptable, Anybody, with a sense of identity, a personal identity, can play these things in different ways. And I'll get to that later. So I'm just setting up for you, and you can see there's kind of labels: comb and stardust, nuns and nurses, set whale and humpback, Alaska and train, the Arkansas later, and the robot Irene, and the nose whistle, and the teaching methods. Okay, so we'll try and sort of maybe use some of these during the course of the time that I'm here, but here they are, and I'll be pulling them off of there and using them from time to time. I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself, so I'm going to back off from that in business and get back to the kind of intro that I'm up to. So, bourbon, nicely provided, makes its own sound, but it's internal. It's just like the secret sound. Okay, can you hear it? It's fantastic. It's coursing through my brain and synapses at this very moment, pulsing me onwards. Hey, I was just telling Mark, what an incredibly dumbass, little seduction this is. Let's pour regal wax over the top of the maker's mark. It will attract those people who really have to feel, hey, this is special. And of course, here, if you can see this, this is my signet ring over here. It's a coin that my wife found in the Aegean Ocean a year ago. This is a fantastic story. She was on an island, and she went swimming in the Aegean, and she was out there, and the mouthpiece to her snorkel fell off and started sinking into the water. She went down to get it, and she saw this black stone. And she picked up the black stone because it was just sort of black against all this sort of whitish sand. And she brought it back up, and she brought it to a jeweler on the island who cracked it open with a little ball peen hammer. And there he saw the remnants of a coin, a Greek coin. So he cleaned it and acid baked it and polished it. And it's a coin from the 1st and 2nd century. And there's Zeus. I don't know if you can spot that. Can you get that? And then if you turn it to the back, even if you can't see it, I will tell you the wonder of the back of it. The wonder of the back of it is Alexander marching to battle. So it's all engraved, and then she had it made into a ring. So it's kind of like when I'm on the freeway, I wear it on my middle finger, and I carry it out the door because, you know, my tendency is to fuck you. Anybody's going to give me hardball looks while I'm driving. And this does it, man. They see that. They don't even know what fucking gang this is. You know what I mean? So anyways, if I could like torch this stupid fake wax, then I could get this, you know, shit going here and just like stamp every motherfucking thing with Maker's Mark. You know, awesome. Okay, well, anyways. So, you know, one of the first things I ever sort of came upon, and you probably have as a child as well, is, you know, a wax paper. Oh, the wax paper. Oh, here it is. This wax paper? Yeah, maybe we'll try this. If this plays any better. I had trouble with parchment. Parchment is good for writing down scribe orders from the Pharaoh, but sometimes it doesn't work with combs, you know. So, and I don't know if the Pharaohs ever checked this out, you know, with their combs, but let's see how this sounds. Oh, great. Howdy Doody. Howdy Doody was my absolute favorite show because 2/3 of the cast weren't real. 2 of the guys were like puppets, wood puppets, and they had no particular sophistication, and it was really exposed with the wires. And it kind of thrilled me to no end that these transparently inanimate objects could have voice and personality. Now, if you were a guy like me later as a teenager, you couldn't play it because there'd be so much, you know, Brill cream and hair shit in there. You know, it would sort of wouldn't work. So thank goodness. Thanks to the wax paper. Let me just point something out, and I want to start this off with this fantastic bag of little tiny prehistoric nuts that I've saved for most of my life and probably before. Now they look like regular nuts, which they are, but you know, nuts have a half-life, I think, of several thousand years. And so because of their coatings, and they're already hard and their molecules are constructed tight, the incidents of erosion or decomposition are rare. In this case, these 4 nuts, they represent my sisters and myself. So just for a second here, let me take you back in time. See, this is my sister. She's the oldest, and she's got a little covering on her because now she's tarnished. This is my other sister, almost as small as I am, but has a slight wing because she got married before everybody and had 5 kids, which of course eclipsed anything I was capable of doing whatsoever. All right, and then this is my oldest sister, and almond, of course, and coated. And she has had a pretty rough life and needs that kind of protection. And plant life, they call this the A-rill. I love that word, A-rill, A-rill. It's like a seed covering. It protects them, well, as best they can in an environment. And then, well, when you clear these away and you leave it right in the middle, there is this little tiny peanut. And that's exactly who I was, a little tiny naked peanut. Some of the most uninteresting nuts you can find in a mixed nuts by planters. They use this for fill so that they don't have to put the more expensive almond, which is my sister, and the pecan, which is my other sister. Is that a pecan? Cashew, which is my other sister. And then this other one is a Brazilian nut, but it does have derogatory ideas to it, which I'm not going to go into it as a child. There were derogatory statements about this. But let me center around this one. When I was born under 5 months, 4.5 months. And I was under 5 pounds, about 4.5 pounds as it was. Listen to this. I had no fingerprints. I had no footprints at all. And I suffered from wet lung disease. So I'm just going to, give this the moment it deserves. No fingerprints, no footprints. So they put me in an incubator for 3 months, and then they grew me, okay? They grew me and grew me until I was able to come out, and then I'm gonna, share with you this moment here. So I'm going to, this is me about 6 months after I came out of that incubator for 4 months. And so it makes me maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm between 4 and 6 months. And let me tell you something. You see this? Let me show you. This is the look I've had my whole life. It's a cross between what the fuck is going on, like this. Here, let me do this for you. I can do it for you now. Like, I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. If there's something going on out there, I just don't fucking... You see? Here, wait. Here, check this out. I don't fucking get it. Yeah. Same exact thing. And I, basically I still don't get it. But, that was my look. Now, because of that, later in life, no fingerprints, no footprints, because later in life, I went to see these people who read auras. I went to Santa Fe, and then I went to Laurel Canyon, two of the hot spots, of course, of aura reading in the universe. And both independent, both readers said this to me. Why, Barry, you have no aura, and therefore you're visiting. I'm going to say, yes, I'm visiting. I'm from New York, and I'm visiting California. He says, no, you're visiting. Visiting what? Well, you're visiting a planet. The reason why you don't have an aura, because aliens don't have auras. And to this day, this look of, being super inquisitive and what the fuck's going on, and is it me you're talking to and all that stuff? Well, it seems to be consistent. So, this is about a year later. And if you come in on this, Mark, can you get this? Yeah, if you can come in on this, you'll see that same exact... Here, let me show you. We'll do like a triptych. Like here's a 3-shot. Yeah, let me take my glasses. That's me too, it's It's a cow in the middle. That's what I say. All right. Well, that was my younger years, and believe me, it didn't improve. I had a myriad of problems because of such an early birth. I had wet lung disease. I had hysterical paralysis. I'll give you a clue. I can't move! Okay. Hysterical paralysis. And then at the ripe old age of 8, something happened to me that was really disastrous. It was a winter. We were home from school. We were snowbound. It was fantastic. We were playing in the snow, eating the snow, making snow cones out of the snow. And, you know, how was I supposed to know the yellow-colored snow wasn't just sort of like, syrup? But it wasn't. I ate it, and I came down with this amazing kidney disease called nephritis, which at the time, 1954, I was 8. Overnight, I blew up 30 pounds. Overnight, I turned the color of, well, Coca-Cola. And my parents rushed me to the hospital, and I was put in the terminal ward of a hospital in Queens, St. John's Hospital in Queens. While I was there, I was in a ward with 12 other boys. They all had the same disease. And I'll give you an advanced thing. After 1 year, they all died. They all died of this disease, and I did not. I survived. Miracle? Maybe so. While we were there, the treatments were crude rudimenting. It's sort of like, the Protestant Reformation or the Spanish Inquisition, And what we had to do is wear weights on our legs because some guy thought that if we stretch our bottom half of the body, the kidney could function without rubbing up against other organs and causing it a better chance to heal. Stupid. But in that year, I grew 4 inches because I had 25-pound weights on my legs and I was only 8. My mother brought me like a magic slate where I learned how to draw eventually, and she brought me a kazoo to keep me company. And that's where I first left, well, sadly to say, I left the comb and wax paper behind, and I opted out for the kazoo. And so there I was at night trying to keep calm and put myself to bed, and I would just be sort of like this. And some of the other patients who were lying there said, "Hey, what is that? What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just keeping rhythm, to make sure I'm still breathing, I'm kind of freaked out about not waking up. And maybe the sound, coming into my brain at night makes sure that I can continue to sleep." He said, "Well, we want that." Oh, by the way, let me give it a minute. That was the end of me. My mother brought us, all of us, kazoos, so we could all participate. What did she care? She wasn't going to be there all night. The hospital went insane with all the noise that was coming out from the boys' ward. But, at evening's time, when the ward was quiet, you can hear us going. And that sort of set us together. We became a club, a Glee Club of kazoo players stuck in a terminal ward of a hospital. Slowly but surely, every one of them died over the course of the year. And you can see the sounds came down to one. That one was me. Of course, right before that, the nuns, who were the nurses of the hospital, which are as close to vampires as you can get, they wore black habits, and you know how nuns are. Their hands are hidden inside these things. You can't see their feet, so they had this effect. A kind of floating kind of effect as they came over to you and took more blood from you, and it was like, hey, Here come the non-vampires again. And when we saw them, we all had a signal, you know, which we would do, which sounded something like, fellas, aren't you going to join me? The bloodsuckers were about to show up. I lived that year. I lived through the whole year. Some people know this story, but I'll tell it to you quickly anyways. As it was in the hospital when one of the patients died, and they would sterilize the ward. You and all the other patients left would get removed from the ward. The glass partitions between each bed would be removed and scrubbed, and you, being in another room, would be sedated, given a drug, put you out, you know, so that they would return you, and hopefully you would be calm and not freak out at the fact that the bed across from away from you was empty. On one particular night, I got brought in like others, and I was kind of in a stupor, comatose state. And suddenly, so for some reason, I opened my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, a little black baby Jesus was hovering over my bed. It was speaking in tongues, bathed in this beautiful light, and anointing me with holy water. And I smiled at that little black baby Jesus. And I closed my eyes and I went back into my little drug stupor. A few hours later, I could feel hands on me. And when I woke up, why, it wasn't a miracle. It was actually the nuns wiping me down with cloths, apologizing to me for the accident. Well, what accident? I asked. They said, oh, we're so sorry, my son. But when we brought you in, we forgot to replace the glass partition between your bed and the person next to you. And we brought a brand new little black child in that night who was very sick. We came in later to check on you, and we found that he was standing on top of you, screaming and peeing in your face. So then I realized, well, he was peeing in my face. Which story was I going to take? Which miracle could I take? A little black baby Jesus anointing me with holy water and blessing me and speaking in tongues? Or a little black child who was freaked out, peeing in my face and screaming uncontrollably? So I decided to take the miracle. Frankly, the next day that boy died anyways. A few months went by, but here's what happened. My parents came in one day and I said, you know what? I need to draw. I feel an urge to draw. And so they brought me a pad and they brought me a magic slate. And I drew incessantly, and that's all I ever did because I was stuck on the bed with 25-pound weights and getting blood drawn out of me for the month. And as all those other boys died, I survived. And so if you ask me, I lived because I made art. I lived because I drew. I drew myself out of that hospital, is what I actually did. I'm having a dream. The dream is a trip to Alaska on a princess boat. I have a beautiful little cabin with a patio out back looking at the ocean as it travels by, the change in water, the rough tides, the smooth tides, the sun and the moon as it comes down all in one line as I watch it from the patio. It was rough seas one day. Our boat was filled with 3,300 passengers, of which at least 3,000 of them was from Nebraska. Therefore, the food was mostly pancakes, mostly bacon, mostly thousands of pounds of butter, and then thousands of pounds of ice cream. And every day I'd sit with them and they'd say to me, well, where do you come from? I come from California. Oh, you're one of those pro-abortionists. No, you're one of those anti-abortionists. You're one of those people who believe in racial equality and immigration. No, you don't, do you? And they contradict themselves constantly while they're stuffing their pancakes down their throat with tons of maple syrup and a passel of butter. We would go out to the patio and they would have this beautiful patio table. Let me show you. Here, over here, you can see there's a little tiny eagle. And although it is a symbol of the American way, it's rather kind of sort of predictable, pragmatic, and didactic. It has very little mythology to it, unlike the bison or the buffalo, which has a total mythology which can't even be described, which makes it so effective, especially when you see it on that nickel. Well, there it was. We sailed into the harbor, and as you can see up here, we saw our first little sort of, what do they call those things, them ice flows, you know? Yeah, that's it. They're glaciers. This is the Mendenhall Glacier coming in. That was beautiful, and it was magical. And I got out there in my robe and smoked cigarettes and drank and got drunk and did everything I could antithetical to the moment of seeing those glaciers. And it was still beautiful. And you see this right up here? That's a hanging glacier. It just froze in space after millions of years as a pouring over in a mountain. I got a better shot. Hey, this is a great shot at a hanging glacier because I used my cocktail cup and put it over my lens to make it into a little sort of cameo kind of idea. A little iris in, iris out. You know, it worked when there's a little bit of vodka at the bottom. The seas were rough, and I had this dream, and I was dreaming that I suddenly fell underneath the water, and my face was coming to the surface, pleading for something. I didn't look exactly panicked, but I was worried. There was a glass patio table with a pattern out in the deck of the ship, and so one day, of course, I practiced my survival methods over here, getting ready for that special moment where we went overboard. And suddenly I found myself putting myself underneath that textured glass patio table thinking, well, that looks just like the ice outside the ship. It looks just like the water, you know, and I felt sort of connected to that moment. Here it is again. I guess most of the people from Nebraska started moving away from me, thinking I probably was wired with explosive. I go off any second. But there is where I heard it, right there. The whales were passing by the ship, and I could hear them in my dream, you know, even underneath that patio table, I could hear them. I listened carefully, and I perfected that moment. And I'm gonna, you know, I have here these sort of special whistles that describe those whales. Let me play you one. This, of course, is a common blue whale. You get that? Subtlety. Subtlety of the blue whale. Compared to a gray whale, a certainly different kind of animal that doesn't travel from Alaska to Hawaii to breed and feed and breed and feed and breed and feed. Listen to this one. I got this down pat. If you listen carefully, like I do, you can pick it out. Pick out the difference. Maybe we'll skip over sperm. We'll go to humpback. The humpback is my favorite whale. Let me show you this one. You have to listen carefully to pick out the differences. And I did because, as you can see, I was underneath this water for a long time trying to break through that ice. You know, if I was in Alaska, a good old ice fisher would have poked a hole in there and just drugged me up on a hook before he let me go because I wasn't a seal. There's two more, sperm whale, and then there's a set whale. But, you know, I guarantee you could tell the difference, but I don't need to go into it now. By the way, by contrast, if you gave this here whale whistle to a Cree Indian up in Wisconsin, heading towards the Canadian border, you'd find that they could impersonate a grouse, which of course they hunt often. And let me try and do that for you now. Can you see that grouse stirring in the bushes now, thinking, what is that? One of my friends? I never tried it with hunting. But I certainly appreciate the Cree having the ability to adapt this whistle from a whale sound over to the sound of a grouse. No easy trick, I'll tell you, but they're smart. And they know how to live. Let me tell you something else. All the while that I was over there in Alaska, you can hear the sort of narrow gauge trains moving up and down the coast, bringing goods, and sometimes they brought them into the small part of Alaska. The narrow gauge rails were able to sort of carry more equipment because they were small and tighter in the rails. Let me give you a sort of a treat here. That's a narrow gauge. This is a wider gauge. Something you're most familiar with out here in the city. Something that comes into the stockyards every day, you know, going through Lincoln Heights and into downtown as it comes through. You can hear it in the morning if it's quiet. It's a beautiful sound. Well, that's the same train that ran through the Texarkana border as you leave Texas and come over into Arkansas. When I was there with a musical troupe, maybe 40 years ago, we got pulled over by the local sheriffs because we're New York hippies, and it was 1970, and they hated us, and they already put us in jail in Texas for protesting something at the LBJ library. We got brought into a jail, and the jail was a Civil War hospital, and it only had 5 floors, and on the 5th floor were 4 cells, and we got put up there and charged with everything you can imagine. Over down on the last cell, there were 2 black guys sitting there. They had been brought there 4 years ago and hadn't even been booked. And here's what they were doing. They were playing the blues. Okay? Of course they were playing the blues. So we took to playing the blues too. I'm going to play a little bit for you, you know. I don't know much about the blues, but I do know that a lot of rock and roll comes from the blues. So I started using some Beach Boys songs to adapt into the blues, and this is one of them I played continually for months while I was in jail. I'm getting bugged driving up and down that same old strip. Well, I got to find me a place where all those kids are so hip. Yeah, I get around. I get around. I get around, laying around. Yeah, baby, I get around. Trusty penny whistle over here. No, no. Oh. Keloid tumors, August 6th, 1945, Hiroshima. How ironic and, yes, cruel it is that nature has chosen me to become, a tree. These men who look upon me, staring now, dumb, mute, full of awe and wonder, as I sit hunched, curled, I change. No. Hard burned skin, dark, thick, like old bark, grows steadily across my back, stiffens. My frame unbending, my arms twist and take the shape to a sky all but invisible, dumb, mute, full of awe and wonder. I, me, fading, passing. Yo! I will go soon. I will make all the appropriate changes. If lucky, perhaps a strong, sturdy oak or a shady chestnut. You know, a tree can forgive. I believe this is my sister calling. She picks unappropriate times. When I was a boy, the first thing I sort of latched onto as a piece of music was a creative thing where characters became instruments and instruments became characters. Then later, a show in the 60s called Route 66, an adventure show and on the road with two guys, feckless guys who were looking for meaning in their lives, had a tune composed by a guy named Pete Regulo called Route 66. And I suddenly realized that I could combine Route 66 with Peter and the Wolf. And so I did that for years, and I'll do that for you a little now. This is called a train. The sound, the whistle blowing past my window. The sound, the wind reaching cross town for me. A wind pushed steady to my room. The blast, a whistle, a passing train. The train and the whistle pass by together each day. A mournful tone from a sound designed to warm, alert, signify a coming or going. Everyone knows. Everyone knows if you can hear it. That's a different train from others. A hard whistle driven from sound to melody and back to sound and then to melody again. The train is passing. While passing, a whistle it blows, pure, unadulterated motion, and I can hear it. Everything is now still. I know where it is. I can see that yard. That whistle travels to an outer boundary, and there, today I think, why that train smells like good cooking, an oleo of memories poured and stirred. Today I think, what kind of train is that? You know, I only have a few minutes, but in my thinking, I thought Pete Seeger just died. I listened to him as a kid in the Weavers. I almost made it to Carnegie Hall once when I was a boy. But I thought, well, you know, of course he's dead and music gets forgotten, but not all the time. And I thought, you know, I bought this here thing and I thought, well, you know, the future, what will the future be for Pete Seeger? And I thought, well, everything's technological, and I just wanted to give you a few bars of what I think Pete Seeger in the future. I was coming over here tonight and I thought, well, you know, what would be the most fitting end? And I thought maybe, you know, the Olympics. Of course, our people over there winning gold, winning bronze, winning silver, doing their best for the good old USA in light of the riots in Kiev and dead bodies. How can you miss? Not terrifically good, but you'll get it. Play ball.